They said the first sign would be subtle, so subtle that only the sensitive, the sleepless, and the already haunted would notice it. But I remember the exact moment the earth beneath us gave its first breath, or maybe its first warning. It began at 3:11 a.m., the hour when even the shadows seemed to hold their breath. The world outside my window was still, unnaturally still, as if something immense and ancient was listening. I felt it before I heard it, a low, crawling vibration rising from the floorboards, threading through the bones of my bed frame, and then sinking straight into my spine. Not a normal tremor. Not the kind caused by tectonic plates or distant earthquakes. This one felt alive. The light bulbs flickered once, twice, then glowed with a deep, reddish hue, as if someone had placed blood between the glass and the filament. My phone lit up with notifications all at once. Messages from people across the world. Did you feel that? My walls just shook. The ground is humming. What's happening? But no one could describe the sound because it wasn't exactly a sound. It was a pressure, a slow rolling pulse beneath the earth, like the heartbeat of something buried far below the crust. Outside, dogs began howling. Then they fell silent all at once. The silence that followed was heavier than the tremor itself. It pressed against the windows. It bent the air. It made the night feel crowded. I stepped outside, and that was when I noticed the second sign, the one no one could deny. The shadows were moving on their own. Not quick, not obvious. Slow. Drifting. Like smoke sliding across the ground, even though there was no wind. Streetlights buzzed with that same faint red glow, and every shadow stretched just an inch too long, as if something beneath the earth was pulling everything downward. Then the radio turned on by itself. A dusty old radio I hadn't touched in years. Its dial spun, its static hissed, and then a voice emerged. Not human. Not earthly. Deep, layered, echoing as if spoken by more than one throat. The first pulse has awakened us. The tremor grew stronger. It felt like the world inhaled sharply, like a giant stirring after a long, lightless sleep. And then the message came again. This time clearer. This time undeniable. The primordial gods had begun to rise. Every object in the house rattled. Photos slid off the walls. The ground heaved like something massive pushed upward from beneath it. In that moment I realized, this wasn't an earthquake. This was a summoning. The first tremor was the world whispering its final warning. And somewhere deep below our feet, something ancient had opened its eyes. The second sign did not come as quietly as the first. The world had barely recovered from the tremor when the deep hum began. It started beneath the oceans. People living along the coast reported hearing a low vibrating moan rising from the water, like a horn the size of a continent being blown from the abyssal floor. The sound didn't echo through the sky. It pressed directly into the body, into the marrow, into the mind. News stations tried to explain it as shifting tectonic plates. But those who heard it knew the truth instantly. Something was calling from the deep. I watched live footage from a research vessel stationed in the Pacific. The crew looked terrified as the ocean around them began rolling in unnatural patterns. Waves bending inward, circling, spiraling like something beneath them was turning over in its sleep. Then the radio on their ship crackled. The same strange interference that had invaded my home the night before. A voice seeped through the static. Not a voice meant for human ears. Layered. Rumbling. Ancient. We rise. The water around the ship erupted upward. Not like a geyser but like a gigantic shape displacing the sea from below. The camera shook. The crew screamed. Someone shouted. It's not an animal, it's a structure. It's... And then the feed cut to black. But the world didn't need the cameras. It saw the effects. Whirlpools formed suddenly across multiple oceans. Colossal spirals visible even from satellite imagery. In some areas the water turned dark, black like ink, thick enough to stain the sand. People described shapes moving deep beneath the surface. Slow. Immense. Like submerged mountains shifting. And then the symbols appeared. All across the coastlines, from Chile to Japan to South Africa, ancient runes began glowing faintly on rocks, cliffs, even on the sand itself. Symbols that no civilization had written for 1,000,000 years. Symbols belonging to the primordial gods. As the sun set, something even more horrifying happened. Every lighthouse on every coast flickered, then began flashing in a synchronized rhythm, an ancient pattern no human technology programmed. A warning signal. Or a summoning signal. The same humming vibration spread through the air. People clutched their ears. Birds fell from the sky. Car alarms wailed without being touched. Every body of water, from oceans to puddles, rippled as if reacting to a hidden pulse. Then for the second time the voice spoke to the entire world. The deep has opened. The first of US approaches. In that moment the earth itself seemed to shudder. Not from fear, but from recognition. Something older than time itself, something buried in the darkest trenches of existence, had begun to rise toward the surface. And humanity understood with perfect clarity. The awakening had begun. The oceans were no longer calm, but it was the sky that fell apart first. It began at dawn. Or rather, what should have been dawn. The sun never fully rose. Instead, a bruised, purple haze spread across the horizon, thick like rotting smoke. A cold wind rolled over the cities, carrying a distant, metallic ringing, like chains dragging across the heavens. People came outside and looked upward, and then they saw the cracks. Not cracks in clouds. Cracks in the sky itself. Jagged, glowing fissures split open high above the atmosphere, stretching from horizon to horizon like fractures in glass. Light leaked through them, pale, sickly, and wrong. It pulsed like the heartbeat of a sleeping titan. As the world stared upward, the first fragment fell. It looked like a burning shard of obsidian dropping from the heavens, leaving a trail of black fire behind it. It crashed into a desert in northern Africa, creating a crater that glowed with an eerie blue heat. Scientists rushed to report it. They were the first to die from it. Their instruments melted. Their cameras malfunctioned. But their microphones captured something, just before the feed collapsed into static. A voice. Cold, ancient, and echoing like a whisper inside a cavern the size of a universe. The second gate breaks. Then the shard cracked open. A pulse spread from it, sweeping across the sand, rolling through the air like a silent explosion. And wherever that pulse touched, shadows twisted into impossible shapes. Human shapes, but not human. Tall, thin silhouettes with elongated limbs, moving with a slow, dreadful precision. They did not attack. Not yet. They simply watched. Everywhere the sky cracked, strange lights seeped through, colors no human eye had ever witnessed. Birds fled in flocks, smashing into buildings, falling by the thousands. Dogs refused to go outside. The entire animal kingdom reacted before humanity could understand. And then the atmospheric pressure dropped. People collapsed in the streets, clutching their chests, struggling to breathe. Some fainted. Others screamed in panic as the air felt suddenly heavy, thick, electric, charged with something not meant for this world. Airplanes fell from the sky one after another, their engines failing simultaneously. Cities went dark. Satellites blinked out. The moon turned red, then black, then vanished entirely for 7 full minutes. In those 7 minutes, the world heard them. The footsteps. Slow, rhythmic, distant, yet impossibly massive. As if walking across the fabric of the sky itself. Each step sent a tremor through the earth. Each tremor cracked the sky open further. Centuries-old forests bent as if bowing. Mountains groaned like wounded beasts. The oceans pulled back from the coasts in enormous walls, revealing trenches and abysses normally hidden beneath kilometers of water. People felt it inside their skulls, a thought not their own. We have returned. Those who heard it dropped to their knees, weeping, trembling, whispering prayers they barely remembered. Those who didn't hear it felt only fear, pure, instinctive terror. Then for the first time shapes moved behind the cracks in the sky. Gigantic shadows. Tendril-like silhouettes. Eyes, massive, glowing, blinking open across the fissures like windows into a realm of nightmares. Humanity realized the horrifying truth. The sky wasn't cracking. It was opening. A gateway. A threshold. A door to where the primordial gods had slept for eons. The third sign was complete. The shattered skies had begun. And with it, the return of the beings who shaped the world long before humanity ever walked upon it. For 3 days, the sky remained broken, bleeding light, whispering ancient madness. But on the 4th day, the world felt something different. It began as stillness. A silence so deep, so unnatural, that even the wind refused to move. Leaves hung motionless. Oceans froze mid-wave. Not a single bird, insect, or animal made a sound. It was as if the world knew. Something was coming. Something old. Something divine. And then the temperature dropped. A sudden, sharp plunge, 30 degrees in seconds. Breath turned to frost. Windows cracked. Rivers hardened into black sheets of ice. People stumbled outside, shivering, their exhaled air floating upward instead of outward, as if gravity had forgotten its purpose. Then came the sound. A low hum at first. Soft, distant. It vibrated through the bones of the earth, humming through metal, through concrete, through human skulls. The hum grew into a pitch that wasn't sound at all. Something deeper, older, a frequency that shook the soul more than the ear. Someone whispered, trembling. "It's a heartbeat." They were right. It was a heartbeat the size of a planet. And it was getting louder. The cracks in the sky widened like torn flesh, glowing brighter with each pulse, until the entire horizon ignited in blinding light. Shadows stretched across continents, bending unnaturally, spiraling into shapes that defied logic. Then the clouds tore open. Not parted. Tore, as if something immense was forcing its way through. For a moment no one moved. All eyes stared upward. And then they saw it. The first god. The stories, myths, ancient whispers, they had never been exaggerations. They were warnings. And now the being humanity could not name stood revealed. It did not fall from the sky. It unfolded into it. A towering, continent-sized silhouette of shifting dark mass, its form constantly changing. One moment skeletal, the next serpentine, the next a massive, pulsating shape of tendrils and eyes. Every second it reformed, rewriting its own anatomy as though reality itself bent to its will. Its presence warped everything. Buildings twisted into impossible angles. Time slowed, then sped, then froze. People found their reflections moving independently. Shadows behaved like living creatures. But the eyes were the worst. Thousands of them. Glowing white. Blinking open across its massive frame. Each eye looked directly at a different part of the world, seeing all at once. People who met those eyes screamed. Not from fear but from memory. They remembered places they had never been. Worlds that never existed. Centuries they had never lived. Deaths they had never died. The first god wasn't just seen. It was felt. Inside bones. Inside thoughts. Inside dreams. And then it spoke. Not with sound. With the sky itself. The clouds bent inward as a single voice filled the world, layered with thunder, whisper, and ancient echoes of forgotten civilizations. We have slumbered. The ground shook. Oceans reversed direction. We have returned. People collapsed to their knees. Your age ends. A wave of force rippled outward from the first god. A pulse that flattened forests, shattered cities, extinguished all electricity in an instant. Planes dropped like stones. Towers bent like rubber. Lakes boiled. Millions screamed as their senses overloaded. The first god lifted a massive limb, if it could be called that, and pointed toward the earth. With that gesture alone, an entire mountain range buckled and sank into molten fire. Humanity realized then. There was no negotiation. No survival. No escape. These beings were not gods in the way stories described. They were owners. And Earth was simply waking up to the return of its true masters. The first god had arrived. And its siblings were not far behind. The first god stood above the world like a living eclipse, blotting out half the sky. Its presence twisted the very fabric of reality, but it was only the beginning, because the moment the first god fully manifested, something changed far beyond Earth. The stars began to die. Not all at once. Not violently. But slowly, deliberately, as if reacting in terror. Astronomers noticed it first. They reported that constellations were shifting. But not drifting as stars normally do over centuries. These shifted in minutes. The Big Dipper bent into a crooked hand. Orion's belt stretched until it resembled a spine. Cassiopeia warped into a five-pointed spiral, its symmetry unnatural and deliberate. People around the world looked up in confusion, unaware that they weren't looking at stars anymore. They were looking at eyes. Glowing, distant, watching eyes. Massive celestial things staring down at Earth from impossible distances, blinking in patterns that resembled ancient sigils. And then the bleeding began. At first it looked like a reddish haze along the Milky Way. Then the red deepened, thickened, dripped. People screamed as streaks of crimson light, like liquid fire, slid across the night sky, trailing downward like blood trickling down the surface of a giant glass dome. It wasn't blood, of course. Not human blood. It was the residue of dying stars, collapsing under a force older than gravity itself. Cosmic matter, dark, heavy, radioactive, raining down in thin, glowing curtains. Where the red rain touched the atmosphere, thunder shook the planet. Clouds ignited with unnatural lightning, black bolts that spread sideways instead of down, carving symbols across the sky. And then the messages appeared. Written in lightning, impossible languages burned into the heavens, shifting faster than the human eye could follow. Some people claimed they could understand the symbols, even if they had never seen them before. Those who understood the messages did not survive long enough to translate them. They clawed at their eyes, screaming, begging to forget what they'd seen. Some ran into the ocean. Some walked into fire. Others stood perfectly still until their hearts simply stopped. Humanity did not need a translation to understand the message. The return of the first god had awakened the others. And the stars were bleeding because the primordial gods were coming through them. Every constellation became a gateway. Each star a collapsing doorway. Each nebula a writhing womb of monsters older than time. Meanwhile on Earth, the consequences were immediate. Tidal waves rose across the coasts, hundreds of meters high, glowing red from the celestial rain. They moved not with wind but with purpose, stopping miles from shore as if waiting for something. Animals reacted first. Wolves howled at the bleeding sky. Whales beached themselves in perfect geometric lines. Millions of birds flew in spiraling formations, forming symbols identical to those carved in ancient ruins across the world. Everywhere the first god looked, the stars bled harder as if afraid of its gaze. The world governments collapsed in hours. Satellites malfunctioned. Global communications failed. Every major capital reported mass hysteria, riots, cult uprisings, and large regions slipping into total silence. In remote regions, ancient temples and ruins, once abandoned, began vibrating, glowing, and opening. Doors that had been sealed for millennia cracked apart, releasing cold winds that carried faint whispers in forgotten languages. Archaeologists who stumbled too close vanished instantly, their shadows burned into the walls, preserved like photographs of people who had never existed. And then the stars fell. One by one, small points of light streaked downward at incredible speed, burning white at first, then purple, then black as they approached the Earth. These were not meteorites. These were fragments of dying constellations, each carrying something inside. The first fragment struck the Pacific Ocean. The water exploded upward in a pillar miles high, glowing red from within. The shock wave flattened entire coastlines, yet the ocean didn't settle afterward. It began boiling. Steam rose. Bubbles churned. The water turned black. Then something rose from the dark. A colossal, serpentine shape, its body covered in pulsating glyphs, its eyes glowing the color of extinguished stars. The primordial god of the depths had awakened. And it was not alone. Across the world, impact sites erupted in light. From each crater, each ocean trench, each fault line, another god emerged. Some with wings of shadow. Some with limbs like twisted trees. Some with faces that folded into more faces, endlessly. The first god raised its hand, and the sky thundered in response. The bleeding stars shook violently as if in agony, and began collapsing inward, imploding silently, sending ripples across the universe. Astronomers whispered their final words. The stars aren't dying. They're being eaten. As the constellations vanished, the world fell darker and darker until only the red glow of the cosmic bleeding remained. Humanity had no hope left. No light. No guidance. The stars had always been the map of civilization. Now they were gone. Replaced by ancient eyes staring down at a world that no longer belonged to humans. Earth was being rewritten under the gaze of the primordial gods. The bleeding sky was not a warning. It was the beginning of cosmic harvest. And the first god, towering above all, whispered its command to the others. A single vibration that shook every mountain, every ocean, every bone and every living creature. Begin. The storm that followed the awakening of the first god did not bring rain. It brought memory. The world groaned like an ancient beast and the air grew heavier, so thick that every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Across the night sky, cracks of pale gold shimmered, stretching like fractures in glass. They pulsed softly like veins beneath translucent skin. These were not lightning. They were veils tearing. As the last echo of the first god's awakening faded, something else drifted through those golden fractures. A low, vibrating hum, like an ancient choir whispering from behind the sky. Not human. Not even mortal. A resonance older than language. Miles away, the survivors gathered in the ruined chapel felt it in their bones. The candles lit themselves without flame. Shadows extended longer than their owners. Walls wept black moisture. Father Aaron staggered, clutching the altar. These are the veil tremors, he whispered. The second phase has begun. The narrator's voice dips low, slow. The world was no longer a world. It was a waiting room. Outside, time warped. You could look at a tree and see it growing, dying, and sprouting again in the same breath. The river behind the chapel flowed backward, carrying whispers instead of water, whispers begging, "Let us through, let us through." One survivor, Leora, approached the door despite the others pleading for her to stop. She wasn't walking toward anything. She was being called. As she stepped outside, the golden fractures above widened, one splitting open just enough to reveal a shape behind it. Not fully seen, just an outline, colossal and writhing, like dozens of living limbs woven together, crowned with a halo of shifting eyes. The first god had returned. But it was not alone. Its presence pushed through the cracks, bending reality beneath its weight. Stones levitated. Grass curled into sigils. The sky folded inward like a closing fist. Leora whispered, entranced, "They're not coming. They're returning to what was always theirs." Then she screamed, her voice stretched unnaturally long, echoing for several seconds after her mouth closed. Her shadow tore itself free from her feet and crawled toward the widening fracture above. Inside the chapel, Father Aaron opened an ancient scripture. Its pages turned on their own, faster and faster, until they stopped at a symbol that pulsed with the same golden glow in the sky. It was the mark of the Sundered Veil. The moment when the thin membrane separating humanity from the primordial realm finally splits. "They are breaching," he said. "And the first god is only the beginning." Outside, the fractures cracked wider. Something massive pressed against them from the other side. Something that made the first god seem small. And for the first time, the world heard its name whispered from every shadow. Aroth Mel, the godbearer. The veil tore. The light died. And the second god began to emerge. The storm that followed the awakening of the first god did not bring rain. It brought memory. The world groaned like an ancient beast, and the air grew heavier, so thick that every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Across the night sky, cracks of pale gold shimmered, stretching like fractures in glass. They pulsed softly like veins beneath translucent skin. These were not lightning. They were veils tearing. As the last echo of the first god's awakening faded, something else drifted through those golden fractures. A low, vibrating hum, like an ancient choir whispering from behind the sky. Not human. Not even mortal. A resonance older than language. Miles away, the survivors gathered in the ruined chapel felt it in their bones. The candles lit themselves without flame. Shadows extended longer than their owners. Walls wept black moisture. Father Aaron staggered, clutching the altar. These are the veil tremors, he whispered. The second phase has begun. The narrator's voice dips low, slow. The world was no longer a world. It was a waiting room. Outside, time warped. You could look at a tree and see it growing, dying, and sprouting again in the same breath. The river behind the chapel flowed backward, carrying whispers instead of water, whispers begging, "Let us through, let us through." One survivor, Leora, approached the door despite the others pleading for her to stop. She wasn't walking toward anything. She was being called. As she stepped outside, the golden fractures above widened, one splitting open just enough to reveal a shape behind it. Not fully seen, just an outline, colossal and writhing, like dozens of living limbs woven together, crowned with a halo of shifting eyes. The first god had returned. But it was not alone. Its presence pushed through the cracks, bending reality beneath its weight. Stones levitated. Grass curled into sigils. The sky folded inward like a closing fist. Leora whispered, entranced, "They're not coming. They're returning to what was always theirs." Then she screamed, her voice stretched unnaturally long, echoing for several seconds after her mouth closed. Her shadow tore itself free from her feet and crawled toward the widening fracture above. Inside the chapel, Father Aaron opened an ancient scripture. Its pages turned on their own, faster and faster, until they stopped at a symbol that pulsed with the same golden glow in the sky. It was the mark of the Sundered Veil. The moment when the thin membrane separating humanity from the primordial realm finally splits. "They are breaching," he said. "And the first god is only the beginning." Outside, the fractures cracked wider. Something massive pressed against them from the other side. Something that made the first god seem small. And for the first time, the world heard its name whispered from every shadow. Aroth Mel, the godbearer. The veil tore. The light died. and the second god began to emerge. The deeper they descended, the more the sanctuary changed. The stone under their feet softened, no longer mineral but something like ancient flesh, pulsing faintly with every footstep. The air thickened, filled with the smell of iron, rain, and something older than blood. At the bottom of the spiraling path, the survivors reached a vast chamber shaped like a hollowed heart. In the center lay a pool of swirling darkness, liquid shadows spinning in slow, impossible gravity. The Devouring Storm. It wasn't weather. It wasn't a phenomenon. It was alive. And it had been waiting. The storm awakens. The surface of the pool trembled as Leora approached. Her mark, glowing faintly along her neck, responded to the darkness like a key meeting a lock. Father Aaron shouted for her to stop. But it was too late. The storm rose. Not upward, outward. Like a sphere of swirling night, expanding into the chamber. Darkness peeled away in ribbons, each ribbon whispering with thousands of layered voices. Screaming, laughing, praying, begging. And beneath it all, one single resonant message. We hunger. The darkness lashed across the chamber walls, tearing stone from the mountain. The sanctuary's ancient protective runes sputtered like candles in a hurricane. Outside, Aroth Mel roared, an angry, furious sound, because the storm recognized him. And he feared it. Storm of memories. Leora collapsed as the darkness touched her. Visions poured into her mind, not one at a time, but all at once, thousands of lifetimes crashing into her skull. She saw the world before humans were ever shaped. She saw oceans boiling under the breath of the primordials. She saw continents torn apart by beings that towered higher than the sky. She saw the elder priests kneeling before the storm, begging it to hold the gods back. And she saw the truth, the terrible truth. The devouring storm was not created to seal the gods. It was created to feed on them. A weapon of last resort, capable of consuming even the primordials. Leora gasped as blood trickled from her eyes. We can't run, she whispered. We can't hide. Her voice shook. There's only one way left. We must unleash the storm. Aaron recoiled. To unleash it is to sacrifice the world. She looked up at him, trembling. The world is already lost. The mountain cracks. A colossal impact shook the sanctuary as Aroth Mel reached the exterior wall. Stone exploded inward. The chamber flickered with fractured light. A massive, golden-fleshed limb reached through the mountain, searching. Statues shattered. The sanctuary screamed. Another quake split the ceiling. Dust rained down in choking clouds. The pathway above collapsed entirely, sealing them inside the lower chamber. The survivors had no way out. Only one path remained. Into the storm. The storm takes form. The swirling darkness rose higher, taking shape. Not human, not god, but something in between. A figure of shifting shadow, hundreds of eyes opening and closing across its formless body. Its voice spoke directly into their thoughts. I was once the shield. I am now the blade. Aaron staggered backward, his faith reduced to ash. Storm, forgive us, we were never meant to wake you. But the storm ignored him. It turned toward the breach in the mountain wall. Aroth Mel's enormous eye stared inside. And blinked. But the blink was not of curiosity. It was of fear. The storm expanded, filling the chamber with violent, swirling force. Loose rock, relics, and even the wounded survivors were lifted from the ground, suspended in its gravity. The choice. As the destruction grew, the storm extended a single tendril toward Leora. It touched her mark. Light, pure, white, blinding, erupted from her body. She screamed, the storm screamed with her, and for a moment the entire chamber flickered like a dying star. Aaron understood. The storm needed an anchor to stabilize its power. A living conduit. A sacrifice. Leora shook violently, suspended in the air. I can hold it, she whispered, teeth chattering. But it will tear me apart. We'll find another way, Aaron began. But she managed a small, broken smile. There is no other way. The darkness wrapped around her like a cocoon, and her scream carried through the entire mountain as the storm consumed her. Not to kill her, but to merge with her. The devouring begins. Aroth Mel shoved its bulk deeper into the mountain, desperate to reach them before the storm completed its metamorphosis. But it was too late. The chamber flashed with blinding white and endless black. And when the light cleared, Leora was gone. Standing in her place was a colossal silhouette of swirling darkness. Humanoid in shape, but filled with cosmic void. The devouring storm had taken a host. A roar tore from its shifting chest. Not human, not divine, but something new. A force capable of killing gods. Aroth Mel recoiled, and the devouring storm took its first step toward the breach. Each footfall shook the world. The storm was awake. It was hungry, and the primordial gods were finally prey. The world above was ending. Across continents, oceans churned upward as if pulled by unseen hands. The sky split in slow, tearing lines of red and gold. Ancient structures, buried temples, forgotten ziggurats, fossilized shrines, rose from the earth like resurrected bones. Humanity could feel it. They didn't know why. They didn't know how. But they knew something ancient had awakened. And then, every radio on the planet turned on. Static roared through living rooms, coffee shops, abandoned roads, hospitals, police stations. Even radios with no batteries sputtered back to life. A voice emerged, shaking, broken, breathing hard. Father Aaron. The last broadcast begins. If anyone can hear this, if anyone is still alive, this is Aaron Dovak. I am broadcasting from what remains of the Black Spire Sanctuary. The static swallowed half his words, but his fear carried clearly. The primordial gods have returned. The world you knew is gone. In the background, thunder boomed. Not weather. Footsteps. The footsteps of Aroth Mel and the others. Marching across the world like mountains in motion. Aaron gasped for air. We unleashed something to stop them. The devouring storm. It took her, it took Leora, but she chose it. She chose to save us. He paused, choking back emotion. She's not human anymore. And she's not one of them. She's something new. The chamber trembled. A roar, deep and violent, shook the recording. Aroth Mel had reached the mountainside. The battle above. Through the crackling broadcast, listeners heard it. The sound of a war between gods. A crash like planets colliding. Wind like screaming steel. A roar so loud it rattled windows across entire cities. The devouring storm, Leora, had taken the fight outside the mountain. The gods answered. All of them. Aaron's breath trembled. She's fighting them, all at once. I can see it through the breach. Gods above, she's tearing them apart. A boom rolled like thunder mixed with a dying sun. She's burning holes in their flesh, swallowing their essence. But static swallowed him. But they're tearing her apart too. The truth of the storm. Aaron's voice returned in a whisper. The devouring storm was never meant to save humanity. It was meant to erase a world infected by gods. If she consumes all of them. He exhaled, broken. She will consume everything. Thunder cracked overhead. The mountain groaned. Dust filled the sanctuary. A massive shadow passed overhead, one of the giants collapsing into the earth. Aaron continued. If Leora can hold on to herself, even a small part, she might control it. She might end them without ending us. Static. Crashing. The sound of galaxies colliding. And if she can't? The signal glitched. Cut. Returned. This will be my final broadcast. The sky breaks. The world outside grew brighter, too bright. Not sunlight. Not fire. The glow of the devouring storm consuming the last of the primordial energy. The sky flickered. Clouds reversed their rotation. Birds fell silent. Entire seas paused as if someone pressed a cosmic button. Then, a scream echoed across the airwaves. Not from Aaron. Not from the gods. From Leora. A scream of a soul being torn between humanity and eternity. The radios around the world vibrated violently. Aaron shouted. Leora, fight it. Hold on. A massive crash split the broadcast. Stone shattered. The mountain split. Aaron screamed. And then the signal cut. Silence fell. For 3 long seconds the world held its breath. Then, a soft voice returned. Not Aaron's. Not the storm's. Leora's. Leora's message. Her voice echoed across every radio, every speaker, every frequency that existed or didn't exist. I'm still here. The world seemed to freeze, from forests to cities, as her words traveled across the globe. I've taken their power. All of them. And I can feel the storm trying to swallow everything else. But I won't let it. A quiet breath. Soft, human. You're safe. For now. But listen to me. The air cracked like static mixed with divine energy. They were only the first to return. The world fell silent. The others, the older ones, the ones they feared, they are waking too. A faint trembling began across continents. And when they rise, I don't know if I can hold the storm. Her voice cracked. So if this is the last I speak to you, remember, you survived the first return. Pause. The sound of thunder returning in the distance. And the second will be worse. The broadcast ended. All radios went silent, and Leora, half human, half storm, last guardian of a doomed world, stepped into the sky as the clouds split like a wound. The final podcast became a legend, a warning, a prophecy, because the primordial gods had returned, and the universe was far from done.